What's going on, everybody? Aidan from Birds vs. Boys here, back with another video as we hit the dog days of summer, and we've got some dog days storylines to go over with you in today's show. Chris Sims is ranking his quarterbacks again, and I think you know where this one is going. We'll talk about his placement of Jalen Hurts, what it means. The troll goes on. He's not in the top five. I think we all know this troll at this point, but I will go over the list, what it means with Jalen Hurts being there, and then get into my top five quarterbacks in the NFL today. And because that's such a storyline that draws so many headlines for all the wrong reasons and bad debate and bad logic, let's do something that's a little bit more thought provoking. We're going to do skill position players, Bengals versus Eagles. Who would you rather have? So that'll come up at the end. Before we get into all the rankings, all the debate, make sure to subscribe on YouTube. Our subscribers continue to go up, closing in on 500. So it's a few hundred since the draft ended. Great viewership on our interview with Cowboys Due Diligence and our most recent shows, talking DeAndre Hopkins, Zeke coming back, all the Cowboys and Eagles storylines coming out of OTAs, everything like that. So make sure to subscribe there. Now, let's get into it. As everybody knows, Chris Sims does his top 40 QB rankings every year, and it's just such a summer thing to do where we don't have any football and we're 2 months away from training camp, and it's just the worst. It is just the worst. So let's just take a look at what his rankings are this year. Jalen Hurts comes in at 7. Ahead of him, Trevor Lawrence and Lamar Jackson. He's yet to fill out his top 4, but it's safe to assume Mahomes, Burrow, Josh Allen, and Justin Herbert are going to be that 4 in no particular order. We'll see what that is. Oh, man. Remember when you were in third grade and a kid would make a fart noise and everybody would turn around and look and they, would draw the attention in kind of a funny way the first time. Then you do it a second time and it get a little bit more annoying. And then the third time it would just distract the whole class and it wasn't that funny anymore. That's kind of the point we've hit with this Chris Sims joke where he thinks that Jalen Hurts is the 7th best quarterback in the league. As you know, before, he didn't have him in his top 40. He had guys like Case Keenum, Kellen Mond, who was a career backup so far, ahead of Jalen. The reasoning being that Jalen needed to provide more, to prove more. I think he did that. If it weren't for an AC joint sprain of the shoulder, he would have ended up MVP. So just to go over the top 10, Matthew Stafford, Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers at 8, Jalen Hurts at 7, Trevor Lawrence at 6, and Lamar Jackson at 5. Okay, so let's just start with the 2 names that we already know that are ahead of him. I like both of those guys. Trevor Lawrence has put together 1 season so far, and not to any of his own blame, his rookie season was an absolute disaster with Urban Meyer. There's no statistical evidence that shows that he should be ahead of Jalen Hurts in any list. And even this past year, Jalen Hurts looked like the better quarterback when they were head-to-head there in week 3. And Trevor Lawrence put it together down the stretch, but there's just a bigger resume for Jalen Hurts so far. And then Lamar Jackson, another guy that I like, and a guy who hasn't been able to finish the season durability-wise the past 2 years for the Ravens, to the point that he requested a trade, and it didn't look like they were going to get a long-term extension done for him in Baltimore. They thought he was out the door, and they didn't know if they could trust him because he couldn't stay healthy. It's a guy who has not had a ton of playoff success. The Ravens didn't even make the playoffs this past year. And on the other hand, Jalen Hurts got his team to the Super Bowl. It's just the logic isn't there. And then I saw a clip for Chris Sims going over why this year he spurned Jalen Hurts this time around. And it was because in the Super Bowl, the Eagles blew a big lead, and it was the way that the Chiefs played the Eagles, and it just left more to prove for Jalen Hurts. Man, was that the only notable blown lead of last year's playoffs? I can't think of a single other one from another quarterback I could put my finger on right now and say, wow, that was a substantial blown lead. Are there any quarterbacks left on this list that had any just historical collapses in a playoff game? Maybe it'll come to me. So yeah, when the Jaguars were plus 4,000 to win that game, you think I love Justin Herbert, but he could have made a few more plays here and there to kind of help that team. He kind of reminds me of Joel Embiid, where obviously a sensational talent, a bad product of his environment in a losing environment. And you start to say to yourself, all right, is it you? Do you just not have that winning capability? Or are you just everything around you, bad coach, bad defense, just bad vibes, there in Los Angeles being second fiddle to the Rams, where you guys aren't ever going to have any success because of the environment that you're in. That's kind of how I feel. I think Justin Herbert is a good comp NBA wise to Joel Embiid, who many of you that are listening right now would agree with me here in Philadelphia, having that familiarity. So to see those guys ahead of Jalen Hurts just doesn't make a ton of sense. And this is just what this is. Kevin and I have talked about this before. This is our side hustle, recording these podcasts and doing this show. If this was our full-time job, we always ask ourselves, could we do it? Like, could we do a show that was 3 hours, 4 hours long on YouTube every day, on a radio every day, and just talk about nonsense like this? Like Jalen Hurts being the seventh best quarterback in the league, Dak Prescott not cracking the top 10, I'm sure will have Kevin upset. And having guys like Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford ahead of him who are kind of, just waning in terms of age and stuff like that. Could we do this? Could we talk about these trolls? And I just think at this point, I've reached a maturity level where I just don't care. I just don't care if people like Chris Sims want to present themselves as the village idiot and put together lists that don't have a lot of logic and don't make sense and put Jalen Hurts at 7 and then use the logic that he had a blown lead in the Super Bowl and then put Justin Herbert ahead of him. If you want to do stuff like that, fine. It gives us something to talk about. It's what, June 5th, June 6th? There's not a lot going on NFL wise. There's so little going on that the AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts are across the street taking batting practice with the Phillies because they don't have anything to do there with the Eagles. So if he wants to be the village idiot and talk about stuff like this, that's fine. It gives us something to talk about, and I'll be okay with that. Now, I'll just give my top 5 quarterbacks here really quick. At 5, I have Josh Allen. We talked about it with the Bills. It just felt like last year there was too much on Josh Allen, and it led to a lot of sloppy turnovers, a ton of interceptions, and they just need like an extra weapon. So hopefully Dalton Kincaid becomes that for them. I think they should be really in the sweepstakes for DeAndre Hopkins and try to bolster that offense. There's just too much pressure on Allen right now. That's why I have him at 5. At 4, I do have Justin Herbert. I think he's a sensational talent. I think he could be a top 5 quarterback for years to come. Will they ever play in a Super Bowl? Probably not. It's the craziest thing. Again, he's the Joel Embiid of the NFL right now. At 3, I've got our guy Jalen Hurts. So again, would have been MVP. I think he is the smartest dual threat quarterback in the league right now. I think he's taking over for Russell Wilson from that, where it's all the 3 intangibles. It's football IQ, ability to run the ball, and ability to throw the ball. He's took huge steps with that. Great deep ball at this point, and tons of weapons around him that allow him to succeed and take that step. I think he's just like a cooler Russell Wilson at this point. At 2, I have Joe Burrow, just ultimate gamer. Great arm, accurate arm, just makes every winning play. I love watching him play. And it's just a lot of fun just to know, like, yeah, he can withstand anything. And at 1, let's just say this. I just named 4 really, really good quarterbacks. There is an enormous gap between the 4 guys that I just said and the guy that I'm going to say at 1. Patrick Mahomes is so far ahead of everybody in this league. Go look at Jalen Hurts' stat line from the Super Bowl. If you just looked at that stat line and didn't know any other context of the game, you'd say, oh, they won. Do it again. Josh Allen threw 3 touchdowns, 2 of them to Gabe Davis in that divisional round game against the Chiefs. They lost. Jalen Hurts, all-time Super Bowl performance. He lost. That's just what Mahomes does. Like, you can put on generational shows and Mahomes outdoes you. How many times has Herbert been able to beat the Chiefs? Not often. It's just because of who Mahomes is. There is such a substantial gap between Mahomes and these other guys. It is crazy. And I think maybe Joe Burrow can overtake him. The Bengals have had success in beating them before until the AFC Championship this year. And they had that crazy comeback in the AFC Championship a year ago where they were down 19-3. So we'll see. Like, I think that if there was a guy who could close the gap, it's Joe Burrow, but Mahomes is just so far ahead right now. All right. Speaking of Joe Burrow, I was doing a thing with my friends and we were kind of having this argument. What skill position group would you rather have? The Bengals with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Joe Mixon, or the Eagles with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and DeAndre Swift? I'm going with Swift as probably the best option in the running back class. I know it's going to be a running back by committee. Maybe Rashad Penny, you can throw his name in there. Just insert Eagles running back here in that spot. Now, this is birds versus boys, so I'm assuming you know what my answer is, and we'd go birds. I think I'm going Bengals. I'd rather have that Bengals trio right there. I think if there were 2 wide receivers right now in the league that are better than A.J. Brown, it's Justin Jefferson and then it's Jamar Chase. So right there, the Bengals have the edge. The difference here, T. Higgins, who I love, 74 receptions, 129 yards, 7 TDs. Devontae Smith, 95 receptions, 1,196 yards, and 7 TDs. So Devontae Smith is the better option there between the two. But I think there's just, so much emphasis on Jamar Chase that it's kind of, he gets more attention, and then that is less targets for T. Higgins. T. Higgins left a few games this year, so that kind of hurt volume as well. And then Joe Mixon versus DeAndre Swift. I think if you combine DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny, that makes like an equivalent of Joe Mixon. And I don't think there's a huge gap between Mixon and Rashad Penny or DeAndre Swift. I think durability wise, there's probably some concerns with Swift and Penny. So if people want Mixon over those two, it would make sense in terms of like the durability concerns. I think Jamar Chase just really carries this group, which is why I would give the edge to the Bengals over the Eagles. I know, which is shocking to say on this show. It's ironic because going up in the championship round of last season's playoffs, and we were talking, who would you rather play if we made a Super Bowl, Chiefs or Bengals? I was like, Bengals, 100%. Give me the Bengals. Now, this is just a micro look at these two teams with skill position players. Obviously, it is not the full 22 players, and obviously, we know what the Bengals offensive line is like compared to the Eagles offensive line. So if you're asking me between these two teams, who I think would be better, I would definitely lean the Eagles. But when you just break it down to skill position players and just go almost like a fantasy thing, like which trio would you rather have? Jamar, T, Joe versus AJ, Devontae, DeAndre. I think I got to lean Bengals, which is crazy. All right, so that's it for today. Thank you to Chris Sims. It gives us something to talk about. Like I said, be the village idiot, be the court jester. I don't care. Well, at least we have something to talk about. We'll be back with our full show this week. Still a lot going on with the Eagles and Cowboys and OTAs. How are people performing? Is Zeke coming back to the Cowboys? Are we really doing that? But they're out on DeAndre Hopkins. We'll see about that. And like I said, AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts, they got a lot going on off the field. That's been a lot of fun, so we'll talk about that as well. Make sure to like and subscribe. We'll be back, and we will talk to you soon.
Chris Hansen here, and I'm going to need you all to take a seat right over there and check out Birds versus Boys.
I think you're completely right here, and I hate it.
Yep. Hey, idiots. Stop doing dumb things. I got 2 phones.
Upside alert. Upside alert.
I might go insane.
I think you're already there.
There's no hope. Hope is gone. If this was an AFC North podcast, we'd be done in 15 minutes.
Bob Hope.
I'm going to drink bleach.
That is
the team you promised me you were going to be this year.
This is the Consciously Hopeful podcast.
I'll be watching.